we have the right regulatory climate, we'll attract capital here, which leads to more and better jobs and economic growth. I think diversity in a board or in your overall leadership team is just a crucial part of competitiveness. Having women in leadership positions sends a real signal that businesses are interested in the perspective of their women customers, their women investors, and representation does matter. Women make up half the population and they want to know that their concerns are listened to, their perspective is part of the decision making in our great businesses in the UK. And you can't really do that unless you have women in visible, prominent positions. Also, in terms of motivating the workforce, every business will have high-performing women involved in their workforce, and keeping them is important. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that they see women role models at senior levels in the business. I think, there's obviously many debates on affirmative action programme and so-called wokeness, but it's absolutely mainstream that having women represented at senior levels in a business helps it engage with its customers and ensures that, I think, having a diverse board with different perspectives on how you approach innovation, how you manage risk, can be a serious competitive advantage. And I'm pleased to say that businesses seem to very much remain committed to that, despite the background of culture wars that seem to be underway at the moment. I think it's really crucial that they do. Again, sustainability is, I think, a crucial part of having a sustainable business for the long term. And there are huge amounts of initiatives underway in terms of incorporating environmental impact into reporting and accounts, which I think is really welcome news. There are great ways in which businesses can begin to measure their impact, both on climate and on the natural environment, on biodiversity, and setting some science-based targets and KPIs for the business to reduce its environmental footprint is now being done across a wide range of sectors. And some of the work that I did in terms of the Environment Act was designed to make that easier. And I think we're seeing some dividends being yielded from the Environment Act. I hope making it easier for businesses to get involved in reducing their environmental footprint and their impact on both our climate and nature. And getting some good professional advice about how to set achievable targets, I think, is going to be important. And then very much involving training your staff and your contractors on how to operate in the most sustainable way, engaging with your staff, contractors and your customers about this journey that we're all going on. And for me, nature recovery and conservation and conserving the natural environment was a key theme of my political career, my time in public life, which I return to again and again. And I've been impressed with the commitment shown amongst UK business to that. And in the speeches I make, I always try and build in that environmental theme because of the urgency of dealing with this issue. And it's a cause I care really strongly about. Well, regulatory reform is crucial for facilitating innovation because there are so many sectors where it's very difficult to get products onto the market or engage with customers unless you have some certainty about standards, about safety, essentially about regulation. So an obvious example is AI, but there are other things such as driverless cars. Agri-tech was something that I was very interested in and focused on during my time as an MP. And all of those, the UK has tremendous strengths, and creating the right regulatory environment will enable those areas to flourish, I hope. We've seen a bit of a contrast in the approach taken in the UK as compared to the EU on artificial intelligence, where the EU rules are, there's a real anxiety that they'll smother innovation, whereas in the UK we've tried to take a more flexible approach which will enable innovation. And I certainly, in the work I did on the task force on regulatory reform I was involved with, and further back in my career doing financial services regulation in the European Parliament, I know how important it is that regulation is targeted, it's risk-based, it's proportionate. But I think also a crucial issue is you've got to be able to update it quickly when circumstances change, because with technology moving at an incredibly fast pace, what makes sense in regulatory terms 1 month may be counterproductive and not work a month later. So I've been a great advocate for testing, trialing different types of regulation, and particularly sandboxes which enable a particular product to be marketed with real consumers so that you can see how it works and whether safety and regulatory concerns do exist, whilst minimizing the risk because you're testing it in a controlled and limited environment. So that targeted nature of regulation, but also flexibility to make sure you can change it when circumstances change. And it's been an area of interest for me for 25 years or so in two parliaments, in the European Parliament and the House of Commons, how we get regulation right, because it is so crucial to enabling us to compete in the global race for jobs and investment. Because if we have the right regulatory climate, we'll attract capital here, which leads to more and better jobs and economic growth. And that's why I've taken such a strong interest in it over the years, and why it too features in the speeches I tend to make. I hope they will take away that everyone, if they really put the effort in, we can all make a difference. That it is worthwhile to stand for elected office because it is possible to change things for the better. I also would tend to reflect on themes about Northern Ireland in my speeches, and that is an inspirational story, and I hope people will take away from that the fact that it is possible to reconcile decades, even centuries long animosities. You can find an accommodation and a compromise which allows people with very different perspectives to coexist together in a peaceful way. I also believe and hope people will take away the crucial importance of protecting the natural environment. That was something that I focused on throughout my time in public life, and I do feel that it's one of the most important tasks for all of us to make an attempt to hand the natural environment on to future generations in a better state than we found it. There can be almost nothing that's more important than that. And lastly, I hope people will take away that it's important to have women in leadership positions, that we have something to offer, that our perspective is worth listening to. I've seen so much change since I was first elected. At that stage, I was just one of only 17 women Conservative MPs elected in 2005, and subsequent parliaments had many more women. They were far more representative, and I think they made better decisions as a result. So just a few of the key points that I hope people will remember from speeches that I've made.